My name's George Lancaster, and kind of my introduction to the military. In 1964 was a great time to be graduating from college. The economy was doing well, and most major corporations had management development programs. And I'd done well in college, so I got nice interviews with corporate headquarters in New York and Chicago and Houston and Dallas. But one of the questions always come up, and that's what's your draft status? And I'd always say, well, it's 2S. And they'd say, well, what's it going to be when you graduate? And I'd say, well, 1A. And they'd all say, well, we'd like to hire you, but we're not really interested in hiring you. And then 6 months later, you get drafted. And so why don't you get that taken care of? And so I'd never planned on being in the military, but I'd never planned to avoid it either, and I felt like I should. So I thought, well, if I'm going to be in the service, I want to be in the best, and to me, the best was the United States Marine Corps. So I signed up for officer candidate school in the Marine Corps, and in October or in the fall of 1964, headed off to Quantico. Well, I went through OCS and got commissioned, and then all officers in the Marine Corps are trained as infantry officers, so I went through basic infantry officer school. So that was about 6 months, and then you pick an MOS after that. And so I'd done well in the basic school, and I thought, well, if I'm going to be in the Marine Corps, I want to be in a line outfit. No staff job for me, no motor pool or supply or dispersing or things like that. So that meant either infantry, armor, or artillery. And I thought, well, infantry, those guys walk a lot, sleep on the ground, and eat sea rations. That didn't sound very good. So I thought, armor, that'd be kind of cool. I'll drive a tank. And the problem with armor in the Marine Corps, most of it is Amtracs, and that didn't look very glamorous. And so I thought, artillery, that's for me. You get those big guns, you sit a mile behind the lines, and you've got a cot, a tent, and a mess hall. So that sounded pretty good to me. So I put in for the artillery, and I'd done well in school, so I got my first choice, and that's what I did. Many of the things that I planned didn't work out exactly the way they planned them. So I had finished the artillery course, and I was choosing my first duty station. Well, I really wanted to go to Southern California and chase Southern California girls, but I also wanted to get a new car. And one of my years in the Marine Corps was going to be on Okinawa. And so the logic of a 22-year-old is, I thought, well, if I go to Southern California first, buy a new car, a year later I go to Okinawa, a year after that I come back, I'm going to have a 2-year-old car. So I'll put in for Okinawa first. And I got that. So the summer of 1965, I had about a 2-week leave before reporting to Okinawa. And all of a sudden, 2 days into that, a telegram arrived and said, leave canceled, report immediately, Cap Smedley Butler. So I got my gear together, got to Okinawa, reported in the colonel. He said, great, leave your civilian clothes and Class A uniforms here. You're leaving in 3 days to go to Vietnam. And I thought, holy mackerel. Well, up until just shortly before that, the only Marines in Vietnam were advisors, and so I was planning on spending a year on Okinawa. Well, by the time I got there, the unit I was going to be with had been moved down to Vietnam, and so I got on a plane and flew to Da Nang, and the colonel said, great, you're assigned to I Battery down in Chu Lai. So I got on another helicopter and went down to Chu Lai, reported into the company commander, and he said, great, we're glad you're here. He said, draw your pistol gear, you're assigned to the 3rd Battalion 7th Marine Infantry Regiment as a forward observer. I thought, oh, great, there goes the cot and the tent and the mess hall. So my job is I had a team of 2 scouts and 2 radio operators, and we acted as forward observers for the 7th Marine Battalion. And I did that for about 6 months. And so that was just kind of typically what we did. We were off on patrols and operations and battalion and company-sized operations, and most days somebody got hurt. And that particular day was particularly memorable because of Christmas Day, and also because this guy is right next to me, and we were carrying one guy out, and he gets shot in the head. And so that was, and I'll come back to him in a second. Then just 2 weeks, a couple weeks later, there's another site, you don't need to read it, but that was a time when I got wounded, and we'd been off on a big operation, and we'd been in a firefight for about 2 or 3 days, and we were running low on ammunition and food, and we had some prisoners, we had some guys who were wounded, and they were taking tremendous fire, and so I got out of a protected area and got out to where I could call in an artillery mission. And the good news about that was I was able to knock out their mortars that were hitting us and relieve the company of the fire. The bad news was that's when I got shot and I messed my leg up and my arm. So that was the end of my Vietnam experience. And the things that are kind of memorable to me, most memorable, obviously, was Christmas Day. And that one kid, and I didn't even know him, but he had, here he was. His name was Fernando Seda Jr. He was a lance corporal. Remains, body recovered, casualty type, hostile, died outright, casualty reason, ground fire. So I always think of Fernando. I didn't even know him. He just happened to be with the squad that I was attached to at the time. And I didn't even know the guy I ran out to pick up to begin with. But I think about him particularly when I sit around the table on Christmas Day and look at my 4 daughters and then now 7 grandchildren and think how lucky I've been and how fortunate I've been. And I feel particularly sorry for young Fernando because he didn't have a chance to come home and find a pretty girl to marry and have a family and have a career and enjoy the things that I've enjoyed for the last 50 years. And so that sticks with you for a long time. My Marine Corps career was somewhat limited. I had a total of 2 years. I had 9 months of training, 6 months of combat, 9 months in a hospital, and then I was out. And went back to graduate school and got married, had a bunch of kids, and had a good career, and life's been pretty good. I have. I've found it, and actually it is. So if you really want to look at it, it's, where is it? Panel 04E, line 33. But it all goes, by dates. So all you do is find 1965 and go to December, and of course you can find when Fernando was, but that's about what I know. I don't know. I really don't have any strong feelings one way or the other. I think I look at it and cause you to remember and think about people and be thankful I'm not there.